Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about being an old developer. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, imagine this scenario. You are an old developer and a new manager comes in and tells you to implement a 6-month feature in 4 weeks. They constantly shout at you and micromanage you. How would you respond if you were the old developer? Well, it depends a little bit. I would say that the first thing I would do is to evaluate if I'm an old developer who has had the factory workers mindset, or if I'm an old developer who has taken care and nurtured my CV and made sure that I have market value and all that stuff. If I have market value, then I basically start looking for another job. Because as I've said to you guys before, there is very little you can do when you find yourself in a environment that is hostile towards your ideas or hostile to you as an individual or things like that. The average manager or the average company has absolutely no way of effectively dealing with things like this because of the thing I've said before, which is that managers have almost no requirements on them whatsoever to have any competency in their role. They don't actually have to know anything or do anything apart from things that are at least what I would consider things that literally any human being with like a like a sliver of social skills can accomplish. So that would be the first thing. And then if I haven't taken care of my career, well, then I would probably do the same thing I would have done because I'm a little bit special in these sorts of situations, and that is that I would treat the manager who is trying to push for these things as just another individual who needs to be educated in the process of software delivery. And so what I like to do is the something that I call leading people by the hand, and that is in some cases extremely frustrating for at least for me, because basically it feels to me many times as like you're taking the longest route possible, and you're doing so not because it has to be that way, and this is where I need to be better, eh, because I have expectations on other people and their level of competence, which is not a good thing. I know that sounds really weird, guys, but just hear me out. As I said, there are no requirements. And when you get to that point where you realize that there are no requirements for managers to know anything or do anything, then you can sort of think about it in essence. I've actually made this analogy a few times, and I think it's a good one. If you work in, like my girlfriend, for example, she works in the service counter in a store where people of different types of customers come in and have issues with their devices or whatever they might have, right? And so she has sometimes customers who are extremely, tech savvy. They understand exactly what she's saying. Like the whole thing can take just 2 minutes of explaining because they're on the same wavelength and the same competence level technology wise. But then you have customers who know absolutely nothing, and that's not going to be a quick journey. It's going to take quite a lot of effort on her part to explain to them in terms they understand what's going on. And in some cases, they are so frustrated or, so uninformed that she basically can't get out of that situation or that interaction without friction, anger, all these sorts of things. I have exactly the same situation when I work with managers, and it's really the same thing. I basically have to educate the manager in what are reasonable expectations and what are unreasonable expectations. And I do so in, well, as I said, basically by leading them by the hand. And so all that I have to do is to explain to the manager that, all right, first thing I'm going to have to do this. That's going to take about this amount of time. You basically break down the journey of delivery into segments so that they can understand each segment, and you keep on doing that until, in a really ludicrous, silly example, I would say to them, well, I need to travel to the office, it takes 2 hours, so that's 2 hours are gone, and then I have to eat lunch, that's another hour gone. Like, you basically just break it down until they realize that why things take time. That's the thing you want them to understand. You have to make them get into the workflow so that they understand why things take the time it takes. And if they have questions, which is in many cases the thing, like when people micromanage and things like that, all I have to say is, well, yeah, this is possible, or no, that's not possible, and then motivate everything. It helps a lot here if you have embraced some type of stoic values or similar things, because the main thing here is to keep cool, absolutely rock solid at all times, and just act professional. Because if you have a manager who does not behave in that way, there is, as I said, you don't gain anything from escalating. Because if you have the option of walking away, then you can do whatever you want. You always have that option. But if you want to stay, or if you don't want to play the I'm gonna go somewhere else card, then you have nothing to gain from escalating the situation. It's the exact same thing when you work in a store or something like that. That if you get angry at a person who is behaving poorly, that doesn't help your situation in any way, because what's more likely to happen is that the person may or may not be aware of, and it's very likely that they are not aware of, or they don't actually care, that they are misbehaving in some fashion or behaving poorly. And so if you behave poorly back, from their perspective, you are the aggressor now. Which is, I know, super weird, but trust me when I say this, guys, every single person will play the victim in practically any situation, because very few people have the personal insight to understand when they have misbehaved and when they've been in the right. So what I want you to take away from this is that it doesn't really matter if you're dealing with a manager who wants you to deliver something. Like what I like to say is always, the problem is what the problem is. If it takes 6 months to deliver, then it takes 6 months. It doesn't matter if they want it to be faster. The only thing you can do in those situations, apart from the obvious stuff, which is like the scope and so forth, but here we're talking about making people understand and sort of comprehend why things will not go as fast as they want, then it becomes an education piece in essence. And you, as I said, can think of this very similarly, in a very similar fashion to working in a store, where you have people from all kinds of backgrounds who come to you for something. Some of your customers are going to be super, super smart and super, super well informed, and some of them are going to be completely oblivious and really obnoxious and angry and so forth and so forth. And if your intention is to maneuver a situation like that, nothing will be better or will get better from you getting upset or so forth and so forth. It really comes down to trying to go through the frustration and get through all these emotions that you're dealing with in many cases, because it's usually a case of emotions, and get to the heart and soul of what usually makes people understand something, which is you have to put them in a context where they realize that, objectively, this will take this amount of time, this is how the process works. Like, they have to have insight into why things work the way they work. And for you as a software developer, that is not that difficult, because all you have to know is, okay, here are all the things I have to do in order to deliver, and then present that information in the best and most methodical way that you can, so that the individual who, or in this case your manager, who is frustrated and so forth and so forth, have no real, they have an understanding of why things take the time it takes. Because if someone comes to you and asks you to move the moon, and they don't understand what would be entailed in doing that, well then yeah, sure, they can be angry and just keep on saying that it should go faster and faster and faster, and then you go, yeah, but I'm only here 8 hours. I have, an hour for lunch, etc., etc. And here are all the things I have to accomplish in order to get to the end goal. And if you break it down far enough, even the most simple-minded person will realize that, okay, yeah, these things are kind of important. And if they feel like they're gonna micromanage you, and they feel like what the things that you are presenting, like classic one is testing or something like that, if they don't care about that, okay, let's pluck it out. Okay, now you saved 20 minutes, or you saved an hour, or so forth and so forth. That's the approach that usually works the best. Have a great day.